Russian leader Vladimir Putin says his country will focus more on bolstering its nuclear forces. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden calls Russia's nuclear treaty suspension a big mistake. Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo simulated the taking down of missiles from Pyongyang. The combined maritime drill is the latest trilateral effort to counter threats from North Korea. The central bank in South Korea will decide on the key interest rate in the coming hour. A rate freeze is thought to be the case this time. Our On Point has the analysis. More nuclear threats from Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country will pay increased attention to boosting its nuclear forces. The comments coming just a day after the Kremlin suspended adherence to the New START nuclear policy treaty. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
In a video address marking Thursday's Defender of the Fatherland holiday in Russia, President Vladimir Putin said his country will now pay increased attention to boosting its nuclear forces while equipping its armed forces with the latest advanced equipment and weapons. This includes Russia's plans to begin mass deliveries of Zircon sea-launched hypersonic missiles. His comments also come just a day after he announced that Russia will be suspending the New START nuclear weapons control treaty between Moscow and Washington. Putin's comments on suspending the New START treaty and focusing the country's attention on boosting its nuclear forces are raising concerns that Moscow might be headed toward preparing for a nuclear war. However, in a response to the growing fears, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov held a conference call with reporters on Wednesday, stressing that suspension of the treaty does not increase the risk of a nuclear war. Instead, Peskov added that Moscow is willing to return to adhering to the treaty as soon as the West is ready to consider Russia's concerns. Meanwhile, in a meeting with leaders from NATO's eastern flank on Wednesday, U.S. President Joe Biden said President Putin made a big mistake by suspending his country's participation in the Nuclear Arms Control Treaty. Biden sat down with the leaders of the so-called Bucharest Nine to show his support for security in the region. The leaders of countries located close to Russia, including Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania, voiced the need to strengthen defense capabilities on NATO's eastern flank and to prepare for potential threats from Russia. In a joint statement adopted on Wednesday, the leaders of the B9 vowed to strengthen deterrence and defense power across the entire eastern region, while also condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Ahead of the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Russia and China have showcased strong ties amid growing concerns that Beijing might offer the Kremlin stronger support. Russian President Vladimir Putin met China's top diplomat Wang Yi in Moscow Wednesday, saying that the two countries are reaching new milestones in relations. The meeting is widely seen as a precursor to a state summit, with Putin saying Chinese President Xi Jinping would visit Russia. Wang emphasized that Moscow and Beijing both support multipolarity in an apparent reference to their shared goal of countering U.S. dominance. Wang's trip comes after U.S. President Joe Biden's surprise visit to Ukraine earlier in the week. Now, moving on to the Korean Peninsula, Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo simulated the taking down of missiles from Pyongyang in their latest trilateral drill to counter threats from North Korea. Our defense correspondent Oh Soo-young has more.
South Korea, the United States, and Japan staged a combined missile defense drill Wednesday, enhancing their joint response to deterring North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats. The drill took place in the East Sea and involved the three countries' Aegis-equipped guided missile warships, South Korea's largest destroyers Haejong the Great, the USS Barry, and Japan's Atago destroyer. Based on a computer simulation, the Allies practiced information sharing to increase their ability to detect, track, and intercept incoming ballistic missiles. A Joint Chiefs of Staff official said South Korea and Japanese forces practiced missile detection and information sharing, while the U.S. warship intercepted the projectile.
South Korea, the U.S., and Japan have strengthened our security cooperation and response system through this maritime missile defense training.
The exercise seems to have been organized in response to North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile launch on Saturday, which was followed by two short-range ballistic missiles on Monday morning. It's the second such drill that the three countries have held since last October. Seoul's defense ministry says the trilateral maritime defense drill will continue to be held as part of joint efforts on deterring Pyongyang's growing threat to regional security.
I think we're going to see more exchanges when it comes to intelligence between Korea and Japan, and also between the three of them, Korea, the US, and Japan, through the mechanisms that they already have in place. In this sense, Korea and Japan complement each other because if we look at North Korea, Korea has better assets on the ground, but Japan has better satellite surveillance.
Meanwhile, the naval commanders of the three nations met in Yokosuka, Japan, at the US 7th Fleet Command and discussed ways to strengthen information sharing and further coordinate joint exercises. They strongly condemned North Korea's recent missile launches as a serious provocation that harms the peace and stability of the international community, as well as the Korean peninsula. Later on Wednesday in Washington, D.C., Seoul and Washington are scheduled to hold discussion-based tabletop exercises, which will focus on contingency planning and procedures upon a nuclear attack by North Korea. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin said Wednesday that threats from North Korea are real and that the only way to respond is through U.S. deterrence. The comments came during an interview with CNN, where South Korea's top diplomat said that the North will not give up its nuclear weapons voluntarily. He also stressed that extended deterrence by the United States is the only effective solution to defending South Korea from North Korean aggression. Park added that there's a little chance of easing tensions on the Korean peninsula in the near future. The U.S. Federal Reserve released the minutes from their most recent policy meeting, which show that policymakers remain serious about cooling inflation in the country. The approval of a 25 basis points increase is evidence of caution amid signs of improvement in the economy. Our Lee Soo-jin has the details.
The U.S. Fed remains determined to bring inflation back to its target level and cool the economy. According to the minutes from their most recent meeting released Wednesday local time, most Fed officials agreed that a 0.25 percentage points rate increase was appropriate. The Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, approved the 25 basis points increase during its January 31st to February 1st meeting, raising the target range to 4.5 to 4.75%. The central bank has raised its benchmark rate over the course of 8 meetings after starting off from a near-zero policy rate last March. The minutes, however, showed that there was a small number of participants that still favored a 50 basis point increase. All of the policymakers agreed that ongoing increases would be necessary to cool inflation. The officials remain steadfast in their opinion on maintaining a restrictive policy stance until economic data shows that inflation is on a downward trend to the 2% target. That's expected to take some time, according to the minutes. More recent economic data suggests that the economy is continuing to grow. More than 500,000 jobs were added in the U.S. in January, nearly triple what economists had forecast. The unemployment rate is currently at 3.4%, the lowest level in over 50 years. Historically, in a tight labor market, employers are forced to raise wages, which pushes inflation upwards. This suggests that the Fed will keep up rate increases, but as many global central banks have raised interest rates, there are also reasons to believe that inflation might soon be under control. Meanwhile, after the meeting minutes were published, stocks slipped slightly. The S&P 500 fell 0.4%, while the Dow Jones lost 0.5%. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
In the coming hours, South Korea's central bank will decide on the key interest rate. The Bank of Korea has gone ahead with a total of 7 rounds of rate hikes since last February to calm inflation. More hikes to come or on an end to the rate hike cycle. For more, we turn to Professor Yang Yi-dong from Iha Women's University. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Good morning. Many market analysts are expecting a rate freeze this time at 3.5%. Do you also believe so? If yes, then why do you believe so?
Well, I do agree with the market expectation because there is the very positive market expectation to freeze the basic interest rate. Well, I think about the four major reasons for this very positive expected. The first one is the FRB in the United States has slowed down their pace of interest rate increase. Last year, they made giant steps 4 times since June through November. And then in December, they made a big step, the 50 BP increase. And in February, they made a baby step. And there's very strong speculation that in the next month, March, they will make another baby step. So in other words, the major origin of this interest rate increase is the United States FRB, and they're slowing down their interest rate increase. And the second reason for this expectation is Korea is now suffering from kind of stagflation, which is a combination of inflation and also the deflation. Because, the last year, our GDP growth stayed at 2.6%, which is the lowest after year 2020 when we suffered from COVID-19. And if you get focused on the fourth quarter last year, our GDP was decreased by 0.4%. And compared to the YOY, in other words, the 1 year before, the fourth quarter GDP increased only 1.4%. So we can tell that this stagflation has started since last quarter. And there's strong speculation that this year, our economic growth will stay at 1.7, which will be adjusted to 1.5, 1.3 by BOK today. So that is another reason why we can increase the interest rate furthermore. And the third reason for this speculation is BOK has changed their monetary policy. They used to put more focus on decreasing the inflation, but now they put more emphasis on economic boost, right? In synchrony with the government policy.
Right.
And also, they seem to be very, suspectable about the integrity between their basic interest policy and market interest, because market interest is getting lowered due to the instruction from the Financial Supervisory Service. And last reason is a high household debt ratio. Our household debt ratio is highest among the advanced countries with the 4.3%. So if we continue to increase this basic income, and lots of households will suffer from high payment back to their banks because most of the loans come from their real estate purchase.
Right. High housing debt. And also you mentioned high inflation. We all know it's no exaggeration to say that high inflation here in the country has been such a headache. But do you believe the rate freeze will actually tame the soaring inflation this time? What do you think?
Well, as I said, I have observed a gap between the basic income rate posed by BOK and also market interest rate. Because, in other words, the BOK needs to take more time to investigate and study the impacts of their interest policy over the market interest. Well, last year, we had a very high CPI increase, and there was a price increase in July with 6.3%. And afterwards, we had about a 5% increase in the CPI increase. And BOK estimate that the price increase will stay about 6.3 throughout this year, even though their target is 2%. So in other words, no matter what kind of interest rate they come up with, they think that we will suffer from 5% increase of CPI in the first quarter. It will slow down, lower down to 3.6 throughout the year, even though their target is 2%. So yeah, if you ask me if this our interest rate will be tamed, I just say yes. But in the first quarter, no matter what kind of interest we may have, we will suffer from 5% level of CPI.
Right.
And with the price increase.
Then let's say the rate freeze does take place today. Then does that mean we are nearing an end to the rate hike cycle that's been going on for over a year and a half?
Well, I don't think so. Here's a very interesting report just today by FKI, the Federation of Korean Industries. They expect that by the end of this year, our base income, by base interest will up to at maximum 4%. In other words, we may have about a 1% point increase for the basic interest rate. What about the United States? Well, they will make another baby step next month.
Right.
And I do believe that the interest gap between the U.S. and Korea will be up to over 1.75 or 2%, which is the highest in the history between those two countries. So I don't think this interest rate will not stop for a while.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for your insight this morning, Professor.
Thank you for inviting me.
Urban air mobility is the use of highly automated aircraft to carry cargo and passengers, a transportation system that could combat traffic congestion. UAM is expected to become a reality here in South Korea in the coming years, under the country's so-called KUAM Grand Challenge. Our Shin-Young with the details.
Even though urban air mobility is yet to be commercialized around the world, its market outlook is bright. Morgan Stanley projects the global UAM market to rise to $1.5 trillion by 2040. South Korea aims to commercialize it in the year 2025. The government has come up with the Korean UAM demonstration project known as the KUAM Grand Challenge, which tests UAM aircraft safety, traffic management capabilities, and vertiport construction for commercialization throughout 2 phases in rural and urban areas. The country is set to kick off the first phase of the project as, on Wednesday, the Transport Ministry announced the agreements it has in place with 46 companies.
The project has been recognized globally as the first in the world that incorporates commercial communication networks like 5G into UAM traffic management. We will conduct a demonstration in an urban area next year, which shows we're moving at a relatively faster pace compared to other countries.
The KUAM Dream Team is one of the consortia led by SK Telecom and Hanwha Systems, along with one of the more prominent players in UAM market, Joby Aviation, a California-based electric aircraft maker.
We will demonstrate how we can utilize our existing telecommunication business to establish an air communication network for UAM. We expect that our data and AI-based technology can provide the best services to customers.
Meanwhile, the government has vowed to provide various support, including the enactment of the UAM Act that's based on both regulatory exemptions.
Our priority is to create an institutional framework for UAM, which is why we plan to establish related laws in the first half of this year. To fly UAM, there are different types of aviation regulations. We will work together as soon as possible to find ways to ease these regulations and establish safety standards.
Under the government's support, the groups will demonstrate their technologies in the first stage of the KUAM Grand Challenge, which will take place in Goheung, Jeollanam Province from August until the end of 2024. Shin-Young, Arirang News.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
Let's start in the West Bank. Almost a dozen people have been killed and several injured following an Israeli raid.
Well, that's right. According to local health officials, in fact, at least 11 Palestinians have died and over 100 people were wounded. Now, this is after Israeli troops clashed with Palestinian gunmen during a 4-hour-long raid in the city of Nablus on Wednesday morning local time. Now, among those killed were 3 militants wanted by the Israeli authorities. A number of civilians also died. Of the injured, at least 80 reportedly sustained gunshot wounds. Israeli officials say they conducted the raid after a social media post reportedly gave them the real-time location on one of the wanted militants. But video posted online appears to show Israeli troops shooting at unarmed Palestinian men. Meanwhile, Seattle has become the first city in the United States to outlaw discrimination based on the caste system. Seattle City Council approved on Tuesday local time the addition of casteism to its list of anti-discrimination laws. Originating in ancient India, the caste system in South Asian countries categorizes people at birth into a social hierarchy. People at the bottom of the caste system often receive slurs and discrimination, and in some cases violence. The system affects Indian and Hindu communities in particular, which have grown bigger in Seattle. The city is a tech hub with companies that have a large number of South Asian employees. Although casteism is banned under India's constitution, it still remains a societal issue. Over to Italy now, where global coffee franchise Starbucks has introduced a series of olive oil-infused beverages. Called Oleato, the range of drinks are made using Arabica coffee and a spoonful of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil. Now, the 5 drinks in this series include a cafe latte, a deconstructed lemon juice pairing, and an espresso martini, which uses vodka and vanilla bean syrup. For now, the new menu can only be found in Italy, but the franchise plans to roll it out to the United States in the spring, with Britain, Japan, and the Middle East following later this year. And finally, the scientific understanding about the origins of galaxies is being called into question. This comes after observations by the James Webb telescope showed 6 massive galaxies near the start of the Big Bang that were much bigger than scientists had expected. They are thought to have been created between 500 million and 700 million years after the start of the known universe, which is estimated to be almost 14 billion years old. Now, current theory says that after the Big Bang, galaxy formation was small and then started to expand. But the presence of these large galaxies so close to the Big Bang clashes with almost all theoretical models. The find means that scientists may need to rethink how galaxies developed.
Good morning. It's more bearable start to the day. Temperatures are 3 to 10 degrees higher than yesterday morning, and highs will also hike to slightly above season norms this afternoon. But along with a mild afternoon, the capital, Chungcheongdo, Gyeongsang-Pukdo, and west of Gangwon-do provinces will have dusty air today, and it looks like getting even worse tomorrow. Meanwhile, a dry weather advisory has been expanded to parts of Gyeongsang-Pukdo province, with humidity levels going down below 35% in areas with dry advisory being in place. Afternoon temperatures will go up similar to slightly higher than yesterday. Seoul will be topping out at 8 degrees Celsius, Busan at 13 degrees this afternoon. While skies will be bright, but skylines could be blurred with that dust. Meanwhile, Jeju will see passing rain or snow tonight into tomorrow at dawn. Now, east of Gangwon-do province to see another band of rain or snow tomorrow afternoon into Saturday. And due to easterly winds, that snow could fall heavily in the area, so please be well prepared for that. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Do stay with us for more updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching.